Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending upon, of course, when you are tuning in. Welcome to Run It Back, episode number 71. I'm the host of this show, Menelik Fernandez. Thank you so much for joining in, listening, watching, however you choose to consume your media. The premise of Run It Back remains the same. We take teams that have played previously and we run the game back, so to speak, where we take a look at our preparation, our matchups, what goes into our scouts, what the coaches think of what the coaches think is of importance for their team to be able to be prepared. And then we take a look at some clips from the game and we run those back and we talk with the coach about why they're running it, then what they would do differently if anything, how effective they thought those actions were. And since pretty much the beginning of the show, we've been very fortunate to have coaches from the game join us. Today is no different. We have Coach Troy Culley joining us as we explore Myerscough versus Haringey. I'm sorry if I don't pronounce this properly, from May 8th, 2019. Troy, if you give me a second, I'm going to try my best to do you justice with a warm introduction to the show. Troy is a coach developer with United Kingdom Coaching. He has been doing so for 3 years. He is a coach of the U16 men's team. He's been the head coach since 2019. For 5 years, he's been at Myerscough College as various roles: the head coach of Division III on the men's side, an assistant coach of the U20 team, an assistant coach of Division II U18. He's also been a U15 national team assistant coach, U15 women's national team assistant coach for 2 years versus one on the men's side. Spent 2 years with Five Star Basketball Camp, which I thought was neat, as I am an alumni of that camp. And then 3 years with the Kent Crusaders as well. In addition to that, forgive me if I have omitted or forgotten anything in there, as your experience is quite extensive, and I'm very flattered to have you on. Thank you so much for joining.
No, I think you pretty much covered it all. Like there's been a lot, right? a lot's happened in. Well, I think only the other day I realized how long I'd actually been coaching. So I think that covers everything. I think the best way to describe it is I've wore a lot of different hats.
There you go.
That's where we're at. A lot of
Yeah.
different hats.
I think many of us, especially at the smaller college level, which I am, many of us have to, for sure. It's kind of par for the course, as they would say. Troy, I'm going to lean on you a little bit for the description of the game that we're running back today. I don't have a tremendous amount of like your scheduling or your box score stuff. I did obviously watch the game, but give us some background about this league, the importance of this game, this level of basketball as it relates to like your national base. Just sort of fill us in as to what we're taking a look at here.
Sure. So the game was the final of the under-18 national playoffs. So it was us, Myerscough College versus Haringey from London. Both of us had undefeated regular season conferences. So we were undefeated in North Premier. They were undefeated in South Premier. We lost to them by 2 in the National Cup semi-final at their place in December. So that was kind of our only loss going into obviously this playoff run. It was a chance, obviously, when we saw the draw and how things aligned, it was a chance for us to redeem ourselves from losing that cup game. The game was the back end of a Final Four weekend. So we played the semi-final on the Saturday at 4:45, and then we were back in Manchester the next day for the final. Luckily, we're only maybe an hour away from Manchester, so that meant that we were able to travel there and back each day. We were able to get our shoot around in the morning, our walkthrough done, etc., etc. And then in terms of like that's kind of Myerscough's involvement with Haringey in that final. Myerscough's involvement the year before, we were in the same position. We went to the national playoff finals. We made it to the final against Manchester. We were up 5 with 30 seconds left in the game and had a meltdown in the nicest possible way and ended up losing in overtime. So this was kind of like we'd been there before. It was great to get back there. And as well as getting back there, it was also we're going to play a team that we'd lost to by 2 at Christmas. And that was our only loss that year. So it was, yeah, there was a lot going into that game. There was a lot around it. So that's kind of paints the picture. And in terms of under 18 basketball, like that was like, you know, the two teams that made that final, like we were the best two under 18 teams in the country that year.
So just forgive my ignorance because I'm over here in Canada and our system's a little bit different. You guys are a college, but you're also at the U18 level. Work that out for me.
So I think England as a whole has just butchered a combination of what everybody else has tried to do. You know, so I think in Canada and the US, it's obviously all through academic institutions, high school, college, university, etc. In Europe, the model is heavily club based, and
Right.
in England, because we're fantastic at basketball, we decided just to splice the two together for some bizarre reason. So, yeah, I mean the Academy Myerscough, like we're, you know, we have our own campus. Like we're very fortunate that we're a fully residential campus,
Right.
set up like a prep school, like a junior college.
Right.
So we would practice, you know, every day, like, you know, situations that obviously yourself has been in. We would play our academy games on a Wednesday in the academy league, and then we then kind of registered the academy as a club, so that the players then got experience to play national league games at the weekend at men's level and under 18s level. So
Gotcha.
we've created quite a hectic schedule, but then some of the places that we end up playing, they might be, and it happened on that playoff run. They're under 18 club teams that will practice twice a week, 3 times a week, depending on facilities, etc. So, yeah, we're a unique situation. It just means that we're all very busy.
Sure. So how many games would a season be for Myerscough?
Typically, you would play maybe anywhere from 14 to 18 in conference, depending on how many teams are in that conference. I think
Right.
like next year, because of COVID and how they've restructured some of the regions, we're probably looking at maybe 14 games in conference. You have a good cup run, you're probably going to get another 8 to 10. You have a good playoff run, you're going to get another good, you know, 6 to 8. A lot of our players all play up. So our under 18s will, like our top age under 18s will push to play men's basketball, either at Division 2 or Division 3. So yeah, typically I think on a good year, I think that year as well, you're looking at maybe 45, 50 games in a year
Wow.
across the different competitions.
That's intense. I love it. So let's sort of dial in on this game. You did mention you played a few days prior. You did sort of mention like the travel and the shooting around, but take me through the process in more detail. What does a scout look like for you? How soon do you start it? What goes into it? And you know, I'll probably have some questions that I'll ask you to elaborate on, but you know, sort of walk us through those days from the previous game to when this game is taking place and what your process is for your guys.
For sure. I think it's probably not a surprise, but we probably don't scout as much as we should do. I think I'm not going to go as far as saying at our level it's overrated, but I think at the junior level, sometimes I think the emphasis is put more on what other people are doing versus what are we doing ourselves. Now, I think at the pro level, the college level, etc., like, yeah, there's, you know, the level you're working with and the talent you have, it's different. But I think, you know, junior level, we try and strip it back and at least try and keep the focus on, you know, we can control what we do as much as possible.
Right.
How good are we actually doing some of those things before we're talking about, you know, X, Y, and Z. So during the season, we didn't scout. It was just a case of, you know, we had like our own performance model. So we had like a set of performance criteria that we sat down with the team and spoke about and said, what are you going to value? So
Right.
on offense, it was, you know, can we pass ahead? Are we valuing the extra pass, and are we finishing strong? And finishing strong was just like our term to, if we're going to the rim, you know, you're going, you know, to score, you're going to be confident with it. If you're open, you're shooting with confidence. So that was kind of like a confidence piece. And then defense was, you know, are we moving on the flight of the ball to make sure we're always in position to help?
Right.
You know, 1v1 defense in the half court and the full court. because again, like if we do a good enough job with that, we don't get into breakdowns, we don't get into rotational defense, but it starts with, am I doing my job and taking pride in stopping the guy in front of me? And that then kind of linked into some stuff around, very, very basic, is this guy a driver? Is he a shooter? Is he 50-50? And those three things will kind of determine how we're closing out. And then within our own practices, it was a case of, if we can't figure out in our own practice what these guys are and how we defend them in our own practice, let's not worry about anybody else right now. So we tried to reinforce that. And then the last one was just box out. And that was something that I took back when I was coaching U14s many moons ago. And, the selling pitch to the kids were, if you box out and we secure the rebound, that's one more shot we get that they don't get. Right. And if we shoot more than they shoot, we're probably going to be in a good position. So it's very simple, but sometimes it's just getting the players to understand, look, if we have more possessions, we're probably going to be in a good position. So that kind of was our model throughout the year. We filmed every game that got broken down into offensive highlights improvements, defensive highlights improvements around those 6 criteria. Right. And start of the year, first couple of months, it was very much come into the video room, show the clips, talk through the clips, etc. As the year went on, it was then just a case of I show the clips and it's right, what you tell me what you see. Right. And like the holy grail is you get to a point where what the players are seeing on film and discussing and bringing up and finding solutions for is what we're thinking.
Yeah, all right.
There was some parts of the year where we weren't on different pages, we were on different books. Like that was definitely what was happening. But as we got closer and closer to the playoffs, like players were starting to realize, we weren't moving on the flight of the ball. Because we weren't moving on the flight of the ball, we weren't impacting the catch. Because we weren't impacting the catch, we didn't necessarily have ball pressure, which then meant we were out of position. That was then triggering, poor 1v1 defense. So yeah, throughout the year, the whole process was on us. Going through into that Final Four weekend, it was then the focus started to be, okay, we've got all this stuff. We're happy with where we're at. Right. Now let's start to figure out who the other people have. So we played Sussex Storm in the semi-final and they had Cameron Hildreth, who is now obviously in the States. So for us, it was a case of we started to realize, right, who do they have, like top 2, top 3 guys? What do they do tendency-wise? Let's start to think about that. And then this scouting report for this game literally was birthed the night before because the semi-final game was a hell of a lot closer than we probably anticipated. Right. And if it wasn't for the fact that we had a 24-14 fourth and won the game by 3, like we wouldn't be in the final. So it was like, so again, that was a case where it was like, you know what, we've got back to the championship game. We've been in this position before. We really now need to nail this down. I think we got back from Manchester that evening, me, the 2 assistants that I had, Mike and Lewis, like we were sat in the office for at least the best part of 2 or 3 hours, just going back through like the film from the Haringey game at Christmas, the film from their cup final game against Reading. And it was kind of like Lewis was clipping individual player film for Haringey. Right. Mike was rewatching our game. I was rewatching the cup game, and it was kind of like all 3 of us were doing different things. And that's when we started to pull this scouting report together, which typically then came down to like, what are our keys to the game? What are their offensive tendencies? What are their defensive tendencies? And then who are their top scorers? Who are their best 3-point shooters? Who are their best offensive rebounders? And who are their post options? And outside of that, like it was just, there wasn't too much detail. It was just a case of these are some things that they're going to do. These are some things that they did at Christmas, which we didn't handle very well. We got wrong. Right. This is where we're going to have to make some changes this time round to put ourselves in the best position to win. Because at this point, it's the last game of the year. That is what the focus is. Like, it's not about development anymore. It's about, we need to win regardless of what happens. Like, we need to leave Manchester with that title.
So, Troy, I'm going to jump in briefly, and I'm going to poke jest at you a little bit because you said to start, we basically didn't scout and then went in to describe a very detailed scouting plan and procedure that you guys put in place. Let's talk a little bit about the delivery of that information to your guys. One of the questions I normally ask is like, how do you deliver to your staff first, and do you modify? But given what you've just described, you guys were all there, you're all pouring into it. How do you then give this to your guys? Is it a piece of paper? Is it a piece of paper plus a video? Are you doing it individually with certain players, or is everybody getting the same thing?
Mhm.
Like what's sort of your process for the delivery?
Yeah. So I think when the caveat was probably like, I don't think we don't scout in the traditional sense. And I think that's
Right.
the, like, we're not putting together scouting reports for teams which you're then going to go and beat by a considerable margin. But anyway, like on ourselves, we probably scout ourselves a lot more than we do others. But in terms of delivery, like I've got it here. So it's like, it's traditionally it's a paper scout.
Right.
All right. Your typical, like
Right.
going through it, you've got the different areas. It's constructed on Word. So we
Yep.
put it together on a Word document. We then save it as a PDF. And then what we've done is at the top, there's like a hyperlink to the video playbook, which is on YouTube.
Right.
And then for each individual player on the scouting report, there's a hyperlink to their individual clips as well.
Love it.
And we just found it was a way where, like in this day and age, like you can give paper scouts out. I've seen it where we've just left all the paper scouts in the changing room. We've just left all the paper scouts just lying around and people have seen it.
Yeah.
Where now it was just a case of, it was a PDF, we could send it to all the players, digitally. They could access it whenever they wanted at whatever time was convenient for them.
Right.
And it was a case of, look, if they were on the bus to the game, they could open up the PDF and they could click the link and watch a video again. If it was the changing room before the game, they could open it up, watch the video again. Because, I'm just conscious that, kids are always on their phones. So that way I didn't have to worry about, like, have we got a projector to set something up in the changing room? Have we got like a classroom we need to use before the game? It was just a case of, look, guys, Amari Williams, you're going to be matched up on, Franklin Agu today. Maybe it'd be an idea, like in the changing room, just, click on his video, watch 5 or 6 clips of what he did against you at Christmas. You got a feel for what he's going to do, and it just gets you in the right frame of mind. So that's something that our head coach here at Myerscough, he put in place like my first couple of years, and I really like the layout, and it's something that we've just kind of carried it through.
Right.
And then within like the text within each box, it will kind of be like here on keys to victory, we had rebounding. So underneath it would say like must control the glass on the defensive end with a gang rebounding effort, and then gang rebounding would be then put in bold. So it was kind of like we would then highlight like the buzzwords within each sentence. And then when it came to individual stuff, it literally was, are you left or right-handed? Are you 50-50 driver or shooter?
Right.
And then it was a case of, in bold and capital letters, this is like not allowed to shoot, right? Forced to non-paint twos, active rebounder. But again, like with all this stuff, I think it's just a case of it's there. And I think information, whether it's data collection, scouting reports, box score, whatever, it's a conversation starter. And I think that's how we try and look at it, is like, this information's there to start the conversation with the players, to get them thinking about, this is what I'm going to do next. So once we put this together, and we, albeit we had a short turnaround for this game, it was a case of, we put it together that night, we sent it to the players that evening, once we'd finished, and then we came together in the morning, and we went into the video room. We pulled up all the video onto the projector screen. The guys were sat in the classroom. We would then go through it. At that point, like I said to you before, like we're at a situation where they know what we expect. So they're just kind of talking us through what they see.
Right.
This is what we're going to do here. This is what we're going to do there. Okay, not a problem. And then we then kind of came back and said, right, we've seen the clips. This is what you're thinking. Here's the adjustments we're going to make to the game plan that we didn't have at Christmas. Let's now go get on the floor. Went on the floor. We're on the floor then for maybe 45 minutes to an hour. Walking through stuff, them getting reps out of our actions. And then they went and got lunch, had maybe 2 hours, downtime. And then we obviously got the bus down to the game. So that's not a normal situation. I think that's probably because it's a championship game, this is where it's at. Yeah. And it's been the same, in the past, whether it's been academy finals, men's finals, like scouting then tends to ramp up for those games, because 95% of the time the focus is on us and what are we doing, and we'd kind of watch film more to reflect on ourselves than these are the adjustments we're making later on down the line. But that's kind of like an overview.
No, I love it. It's incredibly detailed. Thank you for that. In terms of like your rotational patterns and matchups, that kind of stuff, do you give anything to your guys in advance where, or do you prepare anything to the nature of we know which players are playing when, or are you doing that by feel? And then would your first 7 or 8 guys be given matchups, or is everybody kind of I mean, you did play a fair amount of zone in this game, but like, is everybody just sort of like, we're supposed to know everybody's tendencies, traits, and be able to guard everybody?
Right. Yeah, I think so. This was, and I definitely got some heat for this after the game. Like, we weren't a big zone team
Right.
at all. But that was part of the game plan, was we were going to zone for 40 minutes because, looking at, going into that game, like they at Christmas, they were, 1 from 13 from the three.
Okay.
They were 1 from 12 the day before in their semi-final, and in the cup final they were like 3 from 14 or something. So they weren't a very good 3-point shooting team. So we were like, right, well, let's make that adjustment, because at Christmas we had size. We were going into the game that weekend without one of our bigs, who, like, he had 32 and 10 in the quarterfinal game.
Wow.
Rolled his ankle at a national team camp, and then was out for the final 4 weekend. So where we then had like 2 really dominant inside players, we've now only got 1, and that kind of changed how we would match up, because it was then a case of where we'd have like 2 legitimate 4s and 5s to match up with their stretch 4s. It was now we've only got 1, and now we're kind of dragging in like a 3 to make him play the 4.
Right.
So we're like, you know what, like, let's not get into that matchup. At Christmas it was different, but let's just play a zone. And we found at Christmas, like, we got ourselves in a hole early. Like, we went down like 24-11, cut it back, and ended up, obviously, we lost by 2 at the end. But a large part of that was, we just allowed them to run. And we're a running team, and I've always been, space, let's space the floor, and let's have pace, let's play through transition, let's play up tempo. But then sometimes it's like, actually, this is like, you can do it and be really good, or you can do it and actually, like, we're not getting what we need out of it today, so we need to make that adjustment. And I think what I saw in the cup final and what I saw a day before, everybody tried to run with Haringey.
Right.
And like, we tried to do it at Christmas and it nearly paid off, but it didn't.
Right.
And everybody else was trying to do that. And I think their game against, Reading in the 18s cup final, like, both teams took 90 shots, which was crazy. So I'm like, you know what, like, let's just really slow it down. Let's frustrate them as much as possible. And it's probably not going to be viewing pleasure for anybody in the arena. I think there was 7 minutes in the second where we didn't score, and 6 in the fourth. But it was a situation where let's make them grind it down and see what happens. So
kept in the game.
I think
got the W, right?
I think that's what mattered in the end. But
right.
Yeah. So in terms of matchups, like, we spoke through it. When we were doing the video room, it was a case of, okay, you guys have had the paper scout, like, going around and like, who do you think you're going to match up with? Like, who do where are you seeing it? And some of the guys were like, yeah, I know I'm going to tell, I'm looking at this guy. I know I'm looking at this guy. I know I'm looking at this guy. And I think it was then just a case of, like, when we get into the game, you know who your matchup is if we were to go man, but you're aware of what players' tendencies are. So for us, it was a case of whenever there was a breaking game, like, my assistant was saying to me, these are the shooters on the floor. Now, I know that, like, they didn't shoot the 3 very well, but they had 2 or 3 guys which I know from like previous national team experience, and like, they can shoot. So it was a case of, right, they've only got 1 shooter on the floor, or, and we got caught a couple times. Like, I know we got, there was a couple early 3s we gave up. That was just because we weren't switched on to let's contest that guy versus you can stand on the block and let that guy shoot it. So
right.
in terms of matchups, like, we talk it through just so that players are aware of, I don't need to go and focus on all 12 players on a scout. I might, hone in on maybe 3 at most.
Right.
But it's then just having that appreciation that if we were playing man to man and it wasn't this game and it was a different game and you got caught on a cross matchup, it's then, okay, like, am I forcing, let's say Amari's left-handed, so I catch him on a cross matchup and he's on the perimeter, I might shade to his right hand because it's late clock and we can live with that. So it's just they're aware of that. But like anything, like, once you're in it, like, guys are going to forget stuff, and it's just about, you just got to play. Right? You got to play.
It's funny because like obviously at this point I spend a lot of time over the past year talking about preparation and matchups and like we close out this way for this and we close out that way for that, and I struggle with the discussion all the time as to how effective everything is. And it doesn't mean because I struggle with it that we should stop doing what we're doing by any means, right? Like we're supposed to arm them and prepare them as much as possible, but there's just certain people that are going to have better tendencies or better abilities, and like sometimes you wonder, like with this particular person, how much is what I'm giving him actually helping type deal.
Yeah.
So in terms
just
of
on that quickly, just on
yeah,
that
absolutely.
quickly,
Please,
like, I
sorry.
think there's two things, I think, and it's something that I've started to come to terms with lately. It's like, who is it for? Like
Right.
when we're putting all this stuff together, like, who is it for? Like, is it for my benefit or is it for their benefit? And that's something I think, and I've seen some crazy stuff, and I've seen like like NBA level scouts. And I know obviously the levels not comparable, but do you need like a 40-page scout? Like, I don't know. And I haven't been at that level to say whether that's right or wrong.
Right.
But it gets to that point. It's like, how much information is too much? And I think that's where, we got to that point where it was like, look, if we never got it all right, but if we can just determine, like, is Menelik a shooter? I need to get him off the line versus Troy is a driver. I'm going to sag off. And we recognize that when the ball's in flight and we're turning and I see Jersey, I'm like, driver, I'm going to stay off versus driver, I'm going to fly out, just because, like, if we have that split second just to read that situation, then we're probably going to be in a better place, versus I've got to do this for this person, this for this person, this for this person. Like, the game moves too fast. Now, at a different level, it might be different. And I'm aware of that because, good players are going to get theirs regardless.
Yeah.
So it's then a case of, well, how hard can you make it for them? Like, if this guy is leading the league in 3-point percentage, but you make him go and get 15 points at the rim or on the foul line, well, you've done an okay job because you took him away from what he wants to do, right? And I think that's where we're trying to get with the, our kids here, especially at that under 18 level. It's just a lot of them, because they start the game late in this country, like they're in their infancy of reading the game and understanding the game. So it's just, can you recognize in that split second, yes, I'm closing out versus I'm probably not going to close out as hard? Because what you don't want to do is then just fly out for the sake of flying out because we've told you to. Right. And now we're into rotations when that guy was never going to shoot it. But what he did want to do was drive, and now you've just let him do that versus, okay, like, if you don't want to shoot it, we're going to make you shoot. Yeah. And that might have some trickle effects in terms of the opponent coach might get frustrated, your teammates might get frustrated, whatever, but you can deal with that. And it comes back to that kind of, again, is it for our benefit? Is it for their benefit? How much do they really need to know?
Well,
I think it's always up for debate.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Troy, but like, I think you would, I mean, I've had the good fortune of interviewing a lot of G League coaches, and I interact with some NBA guys, and the conundrum or the puzzle of it is the same at that level as well, right? Like, you want to make it as hard for people as possible. You don't want them going to what they can do easily, but I mean, different people, just as you said, who is it for? Different people want different amounts of information, even at that level. So, they're struggling with it the same way that we are. Well, I think it's a decent segue to in-game stuff. What are you tracking? What's of importance to you? How are you making adjustments based upon what you're getting? So, like, what's important on a box score? What do you have your assistants looking at? And what are you looking for in live play when you're eye testing?
Awesome. So I think the main thing that's jumped out off that box score, and it kind of sat alongside like our performance model, is just second chance points. So what is that looking like for them versus us? Points in transition is the next one. And then the last one was points off turnovers. So again, it was looking at, like, if we're looking at a team score, and let's say, I don't know, 80% of the points that they have at the end of the first, at the half, is of us not boxing out and they're getting second chance points, and us turning the ball over and then getting points off turnovers. It's like, well, actually, it gives you a warped perception that they're playing better than they actually are. And
Right.
if we tighten up some of those things, it could be a different game. And I think sometimes you get kind of drawn into that, and it's actually, well, they're not breaking us down in the half court. You know, we're 1v1, we're pretty good, we're moving into the right positions, but where they're getting their scores is on that shot. We might have that lapse in concentration where you see a lot with junior level, like we all turn and look at the ball and the guy's caught in front, and it's like, okay, like, and then sometimes you have that the kid that turns around and says, oh, it's only 2 points. It's like, I know that, but like that could come back to haunt us.
Yeah.
And then turnovers is another one, right? It's just, it comes back to what I said before when, you know, I spoke about the performance model stuff. It's common sense.
Right.
Like if we're spending more time passing to the other team than our own teammates, like we're not going to be in a good situation, right? And I think that's, again, it's, those are the things that I, you know, jump out at me straight away. And then outside of that, I'm just kind of looking at like minute usage, like who's played a lot, who hasn't played, you know, potentially then looking at, you know, who's taking shots, who isn't taking shots, because then you start to get a feel by halftime, like actually, like we might have prepped for maybe 6 guys, but we get to the half and only 3 guys have actually taken a shot, or only 3 guys are scoring. So then you can start to maybe think about, do we change anything? Do we not change anything? So yeah, those are the main ones that jump off a box score. Sometimes I just, you know, I take it from the table because it's been printed out and I just put it down. I don't really pay attention to it because I'm so zoned in.
Right.
But it's there. And then the other one that we try to get the assistant to track was like how many times we get 3 stops in a row. Is the first one. So we do that. But then it was also how many times do we get like a 6-0 run? So it's not just 3 in a row, but it's like we could get 3 stops in a row and then go and turn it over 3 times, and that doesn't help anybody.
Right.
But if we've got 3 stops and that's led to 3 layups, and that then it's a tied game, and that's just given us a little, you know, some breathing room, those are maybe moments that we can look back on. So yeah, it's not just 3 stops in a row, but it's how many times are we getting those 6-0 bursts where it's like, okay, that was, you know, a moment where we might have gone score, press, stole the inbound, run it back for another score, and you can kind of judge things a little bit better. Outside of that, it was mainly just, are they keeping me in check? Am I emotionally in the right place? Like, am I not engaging at the referees? And there's been a number of times my assistant coach has just grabbed my arm and was just like, sit down. I'm like, yep, I got you. Like, we'll take a breather. I mean, it's the main thing is then when the players are coming in and out of the game, like you're just having those conversations, you know. So like I would never really sit as the head coach, but the seat next to the assistant was always vacant, and a player would usually come out, sit down, have a conversation, you know, go dap his teammates up, get some water, whatever. Or some cases it might be you can gauge that kid when he's coming out that he's not in the right place at that moment for that conversation. Right. So you just let him go to the end of the bench, get his water, do what he needs to do. And then one of the assistants will then go down after him and just kind of speak to him at his level. So yeah, again, like nothing too fancy. A lot of it, again, it just links into what I said before, like what are we doing? And what are some of the things that might highlight the fact that we're not doing what we said we were going to do?
Do you have a target amount of kills, the 3 stops in a row that you're trying to achieve in a game?
Not really. Like there's never been like a set number. I think it's just a case of like when I look down, I glance down at like the assistant sheet, or, you know, sometimes I'll just have it on my own sheet. You get a feel like if you're not seeing like those red crosses, we're probably not getting stopped. So in some cases, it might be like call a timeout, have a quick glance. Guys are coming to a timeout. So I'm like, look, like we haven't got 3 stops in a row this quarter. So like we haven't really settled into how we would play defense. Like so I don't get too caught up on the numbers. It's more just seeing, is it happening versus it's not happening? Right. You know, and obviously that's the same with like the 6-0 stuff. It's then looking, saying like, look, we haven't actually strung like a decent burst of scores. It's just we're trading baskets or we're trading stops. Like, let's try and nail these next 3 stops and let's try and get something out of it, just to try and get some breathing room, you know, in this game.
Love it. Do you do anything that like evaluates your preparation process after a game? And what I mean by that, I've mentioned it on a few episodes now, but a former guest one time gave me his post game report, and he actually typed something up that like, this is what I gave them and we didn't execute, or this is what I did not give them that I think I should have. And if I had, then this number would have been smaller and we probably would have had a greater advantage. Do you do anything that's sort of appraising what you're giving them, taking a look on, hey, I need more next time here, or no, this was just execution?
Yeah, I mean, let me share the screen, see if I can show you this.
Absolutely. I think you should be open and available too.
So if you can see this, so that was like the performance model which I spoke about before. So you kind of had your pass ahead, extra pass, finish strong, move on the fly at the ball, 1v1 defense, box out, and then that kind of led into like our improvements and highlights, and those were those additional stats off the box score.
Right.
But what that then led into, like every game was filmed and obviously uploaded to YouTube unlisted for the kids to watch back in their own time. We would then go through, so I would do this and go through like offensive highlight, defensive highlight, just like manually, track the whole game. And then like this was mainly for my benefit, just to kind of see where we were at that time. Right. And then that would then go into the video. The video would then kind of consist of obviously the 4 segments. I would pick maybe the best 4 or 5 clips for each segment. Right. We would show the players the video. And that would then kind of, coincide with like this sort of stuff, which is, again, we'd put the 4 headings on the whiteboard, in our video room, and then what is going well, what isn't going well. Here's some pens, go and populate that board. You've all been sent the game tape, you've all watched the game back. What do you think? Now, this wasn't for the Haringey game. This was for the Reading game because of the stuff there about, man-to-man defense and things like that. But it was more around, again, it gets to that point. Are they seeing things the same as we're seeing? So they would do this. We would show them the clips. We would then give them the chance to talk about the clips and link it back to some of this stuff. And you're trying to get to a point where are the things they're identifying, coming back to this performance model? Right. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. At the start of the year, like I say, we're probably on different books. The end of the year, like they're starting to recognize, like they've heard me say it enough, they've heard their teammates say it enough, like this is what we value, right? And this is what's actually living and breathing versus, well, we think we do this. It's like, actually, like these are the things that are coming up a lot. And then it just gives you an insight into, how, what is their basketball IQ like? Sometimes we make an assumption with like higher level kids, like, you're really good, you're a great athlete, you shoot the ball really well, you play in the lane really well, you're aggressive going to the rim. Sometimes you make the assumption that because they can do all that stuff, they actually understand the game. Right. And we had it, very early on, like
that's our problem over here.
Yeah, like our kids just weren't used to seeing themselves on film. And it's like, you'd send them the game and it's like, oh yeah, I did this. Did you see the move I made? I'm like, yeah, I did. And I also saw like the 4 closeouts you did, which led to this as well. And they're like, yeah. Oh yeah, and just sinking back into their chair. And it's like, this is the point. It's just getting them to see, not just, what you're doing on ball, what are you doing off ball? But this was kind of the process, is like they would go through that. Like my internal process, like I say, was to watch it back and timestamp everything, with a pen and paper, just watching it. I wasn't trying to break it at that point. Like I would just let the game run. Right. And then we would then obviously select like the best ones out of here, which would then clip and make the video. So yeah, that was kind of the process after the game.
Love it. I don't think I have any more questions about the process. I'm ready to delve into some clips unless somebody here has questions for you, but let's jump into a little bit of film here. Let me get set up. So as I mentioned to you previously, I'll run each clip 2-3 times. I'll fumble through a description on the second time, the third time, sort of take it away. Let me know what you see, how it tied into your game plan, what you would adjust, anything along those lines. But we'll start with the first play of the game, which I called the first pay, apparently, instead of play. Apparently, I don't know how to spell. So for anybody who's listening, I'm just going to let it play through the first time, and then I'll get you an idea of what's going on. So obviously, we're right after the jump ball. We attack the offensive left slot. We swing the ball around the floor. So offensive right slot. There's an exchange on the offensive right side. And then we've got an outside drive, a kick to the wing, and then attack the middle, attack the nail type deal. They're really pulled in defensively. So we get a wide open jump shot for number 21 who misses the shot. Did you draw anything up? Is it along the lines of what you want, or are you guys just kind of free flowing, feeling them out to see what's going on? Take us through, any sort of options that you might see, or what sticks out to you, if anything at all.
Yeah, so I think the first thing I try and do is, like, I'm always keen to get like a post touch at least the first couple of possessions,
Right.
just to see how they're defending the post. Sometimes the problem we had is, Amari, as gifted as he was inside, also loved to come out to the perimeter, and that was a shot he could hit, and he did hit it throughout the year.
Right.
But it was just, sometimes it was, because we didn't have necessarily have that balance of the two bigs, that change some of the stuff we would normally be able to run. Like typically, we'd have some high-low stuff in there. You'd have 1-5 would have gone to the rim. Your 4, that's then the trailer. In this instance, is now a perimeter player. So it skewed things a little bit. But yeah, like I think in that instance, I would have liked to have seen Mate throw it into Amari and get something. We're still at 10 seconds left. Like we could have ended up with something better than that shot. But yeah, I think it's something that, as I was watching it back today, in preparation for this, what it's got me thinking is something that I took from a clinic when I was out in Israel with the FIBA course, and it was with Igor Kokoshkov, who was with Sacramento, was with Phoenix, when was with the Slovenia national team, had a brief stint with Fenerbahce, and he was talking around like, you're going to have like 2 or 3 plays that you would use early on to get your team going. You would then have like a section of plays which is like multi options to get everyone involved, get touches like through the bulk of the quarter, and then you would kind of go to like a crunch package to end the quarter or end the half. And it just made me think, like, looking back at this, is I don't think necessarily we had that. Like in my mind, it was a case of, right, let's get a post touch, but then it's also understanding that it's a national final, emotions are really high. I probably should have diagrammed something, better than just saying, right, opening tip, let's get Amari a post touch to see how they're defending. So I think in my mind, looking back at it, it's probably a case of that might, it needs to be scripted a little bit more initially, versus just, because again, when you were playing conference games and you haven't got, you can't see it here, but there's like 800-900 people sat in the bleachers this side. It's a different environment, and we could have got a better shot on the first possession, but it's still an open shot for a guy that's hit it, so it's not too bad.
Like it. Their first play of the game, you guys are in this. I don't know how you'd want to describe it. I don't know if this is a 2-3 with your middleman lifted, a 3-2 with your middleman sunk, or if you actually call it a 2-1-2. But basically, it looks like a 5 on a die, and they've immediately recognized that you're in zone and gone away from what they wanted to do. I think was sort of my assessment, and then they get a little flip over the top. So for anybody who's listening, offensive right slot, they exchange their nail guy, throw it in. Once they do, he just basically attacks the chest of the defender in front of him, and flips it over the top. So what do you see? What are you thinking? Are you immediately feeling that zone might have not been the right idea to start? Like, run me through what's going through your mind.
I think it was, again, it comes back to that. Like, I knew that, Duedo, who's got the ball now, like, he was going to get his. Like, I knew that.
Right.
And I knew that, looking back at their game, like a lot of how they would play would be high-low. So for me, it was a case of, if our other big was fit, like he would plug that middle, and you haven't got, Callan Lowe, who is probably at a push 6'3" plug in the middle. Now I'm happy with it. Like we're in a good spot. The only thing I'm not happy with is obviously, number 5 reaches in where he probably could have walled up as well and made it harder. But yeah, like I say, it's still a semi-contested, it's not an open layup, it's semi-contested. It's not too bad. Like it's not too bad. As like I say, I just think once Bradley had him at the foul line there, he just needs to stay and wall up rather than trying to reach in.
The entry to the nail, do you guys want to deny, or are you allowing them to play, or was that something that you changed throughout the course of the game?
Yeah. So again, like I say, we we only put this in the morning of that game, so it was a
Right.
case of, and we don't, like I say, we don't normally play, like if we are going to play zone, we would primarily play like 3-2, and we have like a couple of different trapping options that we did out of that, depending on where the wing entered and what we did out of that. So this was literally a case of, right, let's show you a 2-on-2. If they're flashing, let's make sure we're bumping the cutters, and it's just that middle guy. You got to make it as hard as possible, and that was kind of the remit to start with. And I was okay. I didn't want, because again, I didn't want to overload them. And then it was like, once we get into it, we might be able to start making some adjustments.
Gotcha. The next one I think has to do with your zone, and this was something that you had just sort of mentioned when you were talking before, but just basically closing out in the corners and what you were giving away versus what you were contesting. He unfortunately hits this one. So for anybody who's listening, basically ball starts at the point, moves to the offensive right wing, comes back to the point, and then after the rotations, they just sort of not close him in the high right corner, and he shoots and hits. So I was just wondering, what is the scheme of your zone in terms of what we are doing in the corners? Are you comfortable giving away the corner, or was this just one that it was early and we didn't close out and we made an adjustment?
So going back to your previous one, like, this was the point where I was like, oh, have we made the right decision playing zone?
Right.
Like they'd hit, averaging 1-3 a game going into this. That's probably doing him a disservice. Like averaging 2 or 3 threes a game, and he hits this one on the second possession. Now, if it was our traditional zone, like we'd normally play, corner would bump out, backside would come across. In this instance, we just kind of we accept the fact that they're not great shooters, and it was a case of, right, he's hit one, we can live with that. If he hits a second, and we might start to make adjustments. But I knew that a lot of scoring was going to go through their 2 inside presence. So I'm like, you know what? Like if he hits it, then and so be it. And I think he hits this one, and then he hit another one in the second half, and that was him done for the game. So he only ended up with 6 points. So again, it was just one of those. Assistant coaches turn around to me like, "Are you sure about this?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're
no,
good.
I'm not, but we're gonna ride it out.
We're just gonna stick. We said we're gonna do this, so we can't flip the script now. So let's just live with it." But yeah, I think it was, typically the zone that I envisioned, like we do now, like with the academy, is more of a matchup,
right?
Which is completely different. Where this was just a case of, like, what can we do to really pack the paint to make it as difficult as possible for their 2 inside kids, and then say, right, well, in the previous games, your perimeter players aren't really doing a lot. If they're going to win today, they've got to win by doing that, and we can then limit up, on second efforts and things like that, and see where we're at. So yeah, that was one that just dropped, but luckily it didn't come back to haunt us.
Like it. The next one is, this is a bit of a staple on my show. So without being married to the result, the question is always transition threes, yay or nay. So, I mean, he doesn't hit, obviously, on this one, but you guys get a bust out, offensive left wide slot, shoots it up, misses everything. What's your philosophy on transition threes? Who can shoot them? When are they allowed to shoot them? And, like, do you reel them back in type deal if they're missing wildly?
So I'm a big transition 3 guy. I have no, mainly because obviously when I used to play a little bit, like all I could do was shoot threes. So I'm still keeping that with me. Like I have no problem with kids shooting. I think a large part of shooting is confidence, and I think sometimes as coaches we strip them of their confidence by saying you can only shoot these shots at these times or whatever. Where I think what needs to happen more is just education around shot selection.
Right.
Like if we look at this situation here, like he could have drove it, got 2 in the paint, and Lewis is a weak side corner wide open, and that's probably a better shot. Versus this is a semi-contested 3. So one thing we try and talk about, like, and you hear cliches battered around, but like, is it in your range? Is it a shot which I've seen you make all year? We've charted shooting in practice, and you're making those shots, you're on balance, and you're in rhythm, then yeah, like I have no issue with you shooting that shot. But again, it comes back to then each situation's different. And I think the case then is like, well, okay, you've done that. That's not a problem. Could there have been a better shot? Maybe, and something that we've started to do recently in practice is, like, so you might score a drill, everything's worth 1 or everything's worth 2s and 1s or whatever, but we're starting to give bonus points for like finding the best open shot in that possession.
Right.
So it's just reinforcing the kids to say, okay, like I might have this 3, which I might hit and that's great, or it's semi-contested and I still might hit it, versus have I got the extra in the corner, or am I going to go, shot fake, get into the lane and find a better shot? So I've got no issues with that shot.
The education process of that, would that be just a quick conversation, or would that be on film at a later date?
So both, this clip might appear in like offensive improvements, and it might be a case of, right, what do we see here, guys? And they might come up with that answer themselves, or again, it's just a conversation, because again, like you've got, I know you watched the game, but the kid that was in that weak side corner, like he didn't hit a lot in the first half, but then second half he goes and hits back to back, and all of a sudden it's like, okay. And it's just accepting that if I've seen a kid shoot it and make those shots all year round, like it's not a problem. But again, it's just getting them to understand, like, are you hot right now and you feel like you can go make another one, or is it you're cold and you need to find something else to get yourself going, and just settle your nerves because of the environment that you're in, the situation that you're in.
Like it. This one was just a set that I liked. I was wondering if it was a play call or if guys just kind of work through some actions. And then I was hoping maybe you could talk through some alternatives within it. For anybody who's listening, the ball starts at the point. You get a double back screen action happening on both sides of the floor. Gentleman on the offensive right pops out. Gentleman on the offensive right that made the cut from the wing down looks like he's about to post up, but on the help side of the floor, they just forget about the cutter. You get a nice, easy one out of it. So talk to me about it. What are the options when you get deeper into the set? Is it a play call? Who are you looking at attacking? All of that.
So yeah, it is a play call. It's a twist on like your traditional. Let me see. What I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna open up Fast Draw and I can just show you. That might be easier.
Love it. I'll stop sharing and give it to you.
Yeah, that might be. Let's quickly do that.
Totally random, has nothing to do with basketball at all. But I just found out what "you have the con" means yesterday. I looked it up after hearing it in I think it was a Star Trek movie, actually. I've always wondered what that expression means and where it comes from. And it comes from originally the word reconnaissance. So I don't know why, it just popped in my mind right now, but you have the con, Coach Culley. Please go ahead.
So, traditional floppy, you'd start either, perimeter players down low, you're going to pin down, you're going to look to try and get a catch. So we've done that a lot, where it's just going to be a case of, 4 might come down here, you're getting a pin down, we're trying to release 2, depending what happens. If we're in this situation, let's say, it's happened both sides, 3s come out, hit the 2, we go into the 4. If the 4's been overplayed, like I said before about us having 2 bigs, if he's being pressured, let's say X4 is playing on the high side, then we can just go straight away into here and we've got a pressure release,
right?
Which we didn't necessarily have because we didn't have our size. So that is what it is. But the other version then is just, instead of always going pin downs, it's let's just mix it up. You can throw some back screens in there. So again, it was either just floppy down or floppy up. And It was just a case of, we called it, that's what it was for us. But the kids, it was just guard's choice, so it was just a case of throw it in, look to get that. And it was just a way in which we could get a quick post up. And throughout the season, because we had the size that we did, it was a case of, right, well, what are other teams going to do to stop it? So when we throw it inside, if you go single coverage, then we're more than happy with that, that 1v1 battle. If you're now going to double, and this is what we put into the scouting report, and Haringey struggled with it and there was some other clips in the game that you might have seen. It was a case of on this backside here, they're switching off. So when it goes in and they double, it's where's that double coming from? If that double's coming from the top, let's say, we're out like this and, X4's playing on the low side, X1's come down a double. If this is your guy and he's gone to double, then you just run straight to the rim. So if your guy goes to double, just follow your guy down. Right. And then we're just going to create something else, because even if you don't get it, by one cutting down, let's say on an X5 and X3 or whatever, if one's going down, he's going to have to get tagged, because if X5 and X3 don't do anything, we can just pass over the top. We might get a layup. So at least it's then, okay, he then does this. If not, he clears out. But you're in a situation then where, okay, we might start to fill round. And it happened a fair few times in that game that, let's say it was before and he kicks it out. You've now created that backside 2v1. Now, I know, we shot horrendous from the 3 in that game. But typically, like, it wouldn't be, like, it's not uncommon for us to go and make 10, 11, 12 threes a game. And we've had some academy games where we've, pushed upwards towards 16, 17, 18. So like because we have our own facility, the guys practice a lot, they shoot a lot.
Right.
We don't have any problems with them putting up those numbers. And that's why it's a case of, yes, we might look at the volume of threes and say that's a lot of threes, but if it's, are they in range? Are we in balance? Is everybody in rhythm? Well, they're good shots. And on some days, they're gonna drop and we're gonna go and put up 120 points. Other days, it's like it was here, where it's 25, 23 at the half, and everybody's wanting to switch off YouTube. But that's where it's at. But no, so it's a quick call. Some of the stuff out of it, like I said, it's either you're pinning down, you're pinning down, or you're pinning up, and then once everybody's inside, you can do different things out of it. We give him the freedom that if it's here, he could go and cross screen for the 5 could flash up. If we throw it into the 5, is he then going to swing it opposite? He then goes 2-man game, we can space away.
Right.
So again, it was more of like an entry. But because we had some of the talent that we did, we were able to chuck it inside and get breakdown on a post catch straight away and see what they did. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with that one.
Love it. Appreciate that. Fun fact, your fast draw looks different than mine because you have the small previews of each play
on the left, right?
Yeah. And I think the next two, so this is another set that I like. This was just an empty side Spain pick and roll. I think it was actually out of transition, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
This one, talk to me about options. I really liked this one, really. So you got a 3-side on the offensive right side of the floor. Excuse me, you do not. You have a guy on the offensive left block, and you've got a drag screen coming. Help side exchange, we're on the offensive left side. And then we get a little screen the screener or a stacks or Spain screen, whatever you want to call it, happening as he attacks the center of the floor. And it just, ends up with a wide open shot. Talk to me about the action. Are you always shooting that? Do you get a lot of the reads? Is it always in transition? Give me what you got out of this, because I like that a lot.
So if Lewis catches it, he can let it go whenever he wants. That was he was one of the few players that had the greenest of green lights.
Right.
And like typically, like we weren't massively sets heavy. It was a case of, wings fill the corners, big would typically rim run. And then you've got your 4 in, one slot, your guard in the other slot. Now, in this instance, we play a lot out of drag screens. And then you saw Bradley do it as he came over the half. It was either thumb up or thumb down.
Right.
Thumb down, it was going to be a back screen to then either get a shot or get a post catch. And that would be another way just to get us a post breakdown. Or thumb up would be after the drag screen, instead of the corner guy coming in to set the back screen, he would stay spaced to the corner. As we come off the drag, we're then going to go on the pin down and look to release the shooter that way. So it was either he was going to back screen and pop for the 3, or the other variation would be he'll be coming off a pin down. And then as he comes off the pin down, the options are still the same thing. Like Bradley can come off, he can hit it on the snapback. We might punch it inside. And it was nothing. It's nothing too complex. It's just little wrinkles that we could put in. And after watching the rest of this game, we probably didn't run this as much as we could have.
No, I
But yeah,
love it. I thought it's great action, help side exchange, moves to help. You end up getting some mismatches if they switch in correctly. Good shots, good post touches. I think it's great action, and the fact that it flowed in transition to me, I thought was great.
awesome, awesome.
The next one second here. There's two clips of this same action showing sort of like wrinkles of it. I call it an over the top type action. So you get an entry to your man on the nail. You cut out the offensive left wing. Your point guy goes over the top. There's a low split on the offensive left side and a pin down on the offensive right side. And then with the pin down, after he gets the ball on the right side of the floor, he attacks baseline, throws it back up top because they overhelp, and you get a wide open shot. And then the variation was same idea, same entry to the man on the nail. You cut that offensive left wing. There's still the pin down and the low split on the left side. And then when he attacks towards the middle this time, you circle in behind and you get the jump shot in the corner. So talk to me about this set and the variation among the two, and any other, like why are you running it at this point? What do you typically get out of it? What are some other variations you might like? Anything from there?
So I think that at this point it was a case of when we're sat in there at halftime, it's like, look, we've scored 25 points.
Let's get a few buckets.
Like, we need to find a way just to put the ball in the hoop. And like I said, we still had the floppy series, but I think this was a case of, we knew a lot of the first half, it went into Amari inside, they were doubling, they were doing whatever. And, outside of the first quarter, we did really well. Like we had 20 in the first and 5 in the second. But I think that was a case when we were coming back out, was, well, let's lift Amari out of the post. Let's get him playing higher up, to kind of open up some space, kind of drag one of their bigs away from the rim. Mm-hmm. And just to see if by giving them something different to defend, if we could create something out of it. So that was kind of something that we chucked in there at halftime. And this is where, going back to what we said at the very start, like we probably didn't script things well enough at the start of the game, but coming out of the half, we were like, look, we need to do something here, get the ball moving, try and drag people out of positions and see if we can find a way to get going.
The pin down that happens on the offensive right side of the floor on both of them, I noticed that they're screening their own. Had you noticed they were switching at this point in the game and that's why they were doing that? So number 8 here, you can see screening his own man instead of the guy coming for the ball. And then on I think the previous clip, it's also number 8 doing the same thing. Yeah, see him screening his own there as well. Had you guys noticed that they were switching? And do you have like a wrinkle where they're screening the other guys if they're not type deal?
At this point, I'd like to say yes, but it's not. We have a rule which is, because a lot of teams switch, especially in our conference, like the rule is always just screen your own. Okay. And we probably just got really good at doing that. Like I hadn't necessarily noticed it at that time. Like my thought process at that time was, like I said, we scored 25 points. Like we've got to find a way to get going. We've got to find a way to find something, get a spark from somewhere. Again, like Lewis, he made the right read, and that's something which over the course of the season, like he would have done hundreds of times. So it wasn't a specific thing like the half. Like we're not saying, they're switching out, screen your own guy. It was more, let's try and focus on the offense, because defensively, like I said, like they were, they scored like 70 early 70s against us in that semi-final at Christmas. Right. And that was probably one of their lowest scores of the season. So they're a team which just, because they dominated on the glass, they got, you got out and run, like they would just roll teams over. So the fact that we held them to 23 in the first half was like, look, we're doing a really good job defensively. We're just at a point where, like, if we fell out of a boat, we probably wouldn't hit water. Like we were just bad. Like, we were just really bad at that point.
Definitely stealing that, just so you know.
We were just really bad.
Well, I mean, it's interesting because when you choose to play at the slower pace of play, when you're basically saying like, this team is probably superior to us in transition, we want to slow the game down, it's obviously something you sacrifice in the process, right? Where you're not going to get as many good looks because you're slowing everything down. So, I mean, it makes sense. It's on par for the strategy that you're using, but you definitely want to see it go through once in a while. The next one, you guys ran this a couple times in the game. I like this baseline out of bounds. Just wanted to, unfortunately, don't score on this one, but I like the set. Wanted to showcase it a little bit. It's a box set that then forms an elevator or a pinch screen coming to the offensive right side of the floor. And then your low man slips out of that and gets a wide open look, but unfortunately, it's just met by a bigger, more athletic guy at the rim who blocks it. Talk to me about the set. What happens if your primary action doesn't work? How often do you get the slip? And do your guys get to choose which baseline out of bounds they're running, or is it a play call coming from the bench?
Yeah, so I think it's a unique situation. Obviously, we had the guy out for injury, and Amari had heavy minutes usage already. So I think it was like a minute left in the third. We took him out. So we had no size on the floor. So you've got 5 and 6 now who are like 6'3" and 5'8", where that would normally be replaced with 6'8" and 6'10". So that changes the dynamic anyway.
Sure.
Completely changes the dynamic. We always have, and then again, there's 2 variations. Like you'd either have 3 in a line, so you'd have the elevator, and in this instance, you've got 10 on the weak side elbow. He would be on the strong side elbow,
Gotcha.
And then it could either be, variation out of this is if he's weak side elbow, the guard comes through the elevator, and he might take the dive straight to the rim, and look for get that post up or clear out. If he's on the strong side, so if they flip it and he comes strong side, shooter would then set the back screen instead of going for an elevator would close, you'd kind of come off the stack. So those were 2 variations of that play. But we had 2 variations from that alignment, and then there was like 1 box set, and it's just a case of, for the most part, we just let them call it. Like, what do you feel? Like, what's working? Like, we don't have a lot of baseline sets, so it's just, what do you guys feel? In some cases, it might be we're calling something from the baseline if we feel like at that point we need something else. But for the most part, they go for it. And if it doesn't work, typically one big might lift out to the perimeter, or we'd throw it out. And depending on shot clock, throw it out, big goes and gets whoever's got the ball on a ball screen, and we just spread out of that. So it's not too complex.
Love it. This is the beginning of the end of game segment. So at this point, you guys had just made some free throws to go up 4. I love how you start with a laugh already. Like, man, here we go. You guys had just made some free throws to go up 4. You did have a chance to speak to them in the huddle before he shoots the free throws. So talk to me about what you're giving your guys. Are you telling them, what you're doing defensively plus something offensively? Are you only giving them the defensive end? What are you making them aware of situationally? And then I'll run this clip just before you answer that, so you get an idea of where we are. This is transition. They come down and they try to force it into the corner. Your big gets a touch and it goes out of bounds, so that they end up on the sideline with the next one.
Okay.
What are you basically telling your guys? What are they prepared for? What's the level of aggression that you want defensively? All those things.
Yeah. So I think I know the graphic on the screen is off. Like, I think at this point it is a 2-point game, right? So I think we're up 2, and I think this is where Mate went to the line for 2, or that might be slightly after. But
no, so at this point I did actually make because I recognized that it was off as well. Those 2 free throws just put you up 4. So you're up 4, and there's roughly like 40.
Yeah, got you. Yeah, that's fine. So I think that at that point, because we didn't, if you go back to the start, I think when Mate shot those free throws, like, I don't remember if we put anybody into lineup. Like, I think at that point it was a case of, Mate was one of the better free throw shooters. He was, a standout national team guard. It was like, look, let him go and shoot that. What we don't want is, give them in a situation where, if we extend up the floor and it goes wrong, straight away you're in a numerical disadvantage.
Right.
I didn't want our guys scrambling. So it was like, you know what, let's just do what we've done all game. Let him shoot. We'll set up a box. We'll pack it in. And worst case scenario, If they hit a 3, we'll see where we're at.
Okay. So ball goes out of bounds. They go sideline out of bounds against you guys here.
Yep.
And I'm wondering, did you give them anything different? Like that first play that came, you deflected it out of bounds. Are you telling them anything different while they're taking it out? It's kind of in that awkward deep corner sideline out of bounds, which I think is sort of to your advantage. And I'll let it run. They enter to the post. It's a bit of a deflected touch. The ball goes to the point, comes back to the offensive left wing, and he hits a semi-contested run out 3. Big time 3, makes it a 1-point game with just under 10 seconds left. So, talk to me about how you defended it, if you gave them anything different when they were sidelined out of bounds, and then what's going through your mind now that it's a 1-point game with 10 seconds?
So I think I remember when that happened, before the shot happened, like when it went out of bounds, like I remember looking at the assistant saying, do we switch? Like, do we just switch it and go man to man? And he was like, he just looked at me and was like, no. He's like, stay. Like, he was obviously a lot more blunt than that, but he was basically saying, just stay as we are, stay as we are. And I'm like, okay, not a problem. And it was just, again, it was a case of, we'd done really well, defending the 3 up until that point. Like they hit 2 threes in the first, they hit 1 3 in the third,
right?
And now they've got a Hail Mary at the end from a kid that hadn't hit a 3 all game. And we did a really good job of defending the 3-point line. So again, it's not ideal. You could argue, does Bradley come across too far onto the guard? We get out late. It's tough, and I think as soon as that 3 went in, like my first thought was deja vu. Like I said to you at the start, like we'd been here the year before, exactly the same situation, up 5 with 30 seconds left, and we lost in overtime. Here, we're up 4 with 30 seconds left, and then this kid hits a 3 out of nowhere, and I'm like, I don't need this.
That's not supposed to happen.
I don't need this. Like, I just don't need this. I really don't need this. And I remember, like, the assistant's like, stay with it. You're good. And I'm like, I'm not. Like, I'm not. But yeah, he hit a tough shot. You
did. You got to give him credit. It's a hard shot. The rotations. Am I wrong in suggesting that this player right here overcompensated when the ball went to the point, which sort of made this closeout more difficult for your team?
Yeah.
And then we get into it, and after this 3, I believe they fouled you, and you guys made one.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Bradley went down the other end, split a pair, so we're up 52-50.
Yeah, so you're up 2. And you did, again, briefly get a chance to speak to your guys, and you put on a bit of full court pressure here. So talk to me about, you're up 2, it's under 10 seconds. What's the level of aggression that you want with your guys, and why the decision to go with the full court pressure here? Not that I disagree with it.
No, I think it's, again, I can give you a really complex answer, but I think in the moment it was a case of we'd sent nobody the possession before, like nobody rebounded, and we dropped back.
Right.
Now it was a case of, because I remember rightly, like when I watched it earlier, like Mate ran in late, so it was like, like it was like a split-second decision: go and rebound, go pick up their lead guard, because again, like although Distras had a very quiet game and finished with 3, he a year later in 2020, like he gave us 30. So the kid can shoot, and I know that. So it was a case of, like get up there, try and speed him up,
right,
don't foul. And that was literally a case of, we've already got 3 guys back in, the triangle to form the base of that 2-1-2, speed him up, show him something different rather than just allowing him to come up, assess the whole floor. And yeah, what's next is a crime in basketball.
Before we get into the rest of this clip, because we had a little bit of a laugh, obviously, as well, unfortunately, but when you had the opportunity to speak to your guys before you split these free throws, do you give them something for the offensive end as well, or are you only focused on the defensive stop in terms of like, hey, maybe get it to this guy, he's our best free throw shooter, or you'll have this amount of time with a stop, like really try and get out of there and not get fouled? Or throw the ball down court, whatever your strategy might be. Do you give them anything for that side, or is it only the defensive side?
Yeah, I mean, like again, I could sit here and say, yes, we do this, yes, we do it all the time. No, we don't. Like the guys know who the better free throw shooters are. So like inherently they'll look for them.
Right.
For us, it was just a case of in that moment, I was like, look, like we just got to get a stop, like one more stop. And that's all it was. Like it was just, really drill it into their head. Like, look, we get a stop here, we're good. Like we got caught cheap on the last possession. They hit a three. If that doesn't happen, we rebound, we get fouled, we hit a pair of free throws. The game's probably done, but he's hit that three. So yeah, like I say, I think I could sit here and say I did this, this, and this. But the reality is, like, it was very much just we need to get a stop at this point. Like, all coaching's gone out the window. We just got to find a way to win. Like,
just let's win right here. So you do actually get the stop. The pressure works. He throws a contested pass that gets deflected, and then your gentleman picks it up and runs with it. Unfortunately, just makes a bad choice.
Oh man!
You said it did sort of turn into a meme locally. He just kind of forgot to dribble. So the emotions run high, and obviously we make a mistake. And then they end up with it sideline out of bounds, with the opportunity to try and win the game. There's 2 seconds on the game clock. And one thing that I really noticed about this, like you didn't really have time to go to the bench and talk, but like, a silly mistake has happened. Everybody has a bit of a lap, etc. But you get set up. One thing I really noticed about this is you didn't guard your inbounder. And so I personally love this. I've made a mental point and I've had people chastise me about it before, but I don't really like to guard the inbounder. I think that it's stupid. He can't score. We have a numerical advantage on the floor. Let's guard other people. And everybody's like, well, what about the pass back? And I'm like, well, what about can go down many avenues? Yep. So I don't see too many other coaches do this. What made you decide to go with it? And is it something that you commonly do? And then in terms of, again, level of aggression, I'll run the play just so everybody can see. The ball gets inbounded. He shoots a very contested shot. He gets blocked from behind by the defender who was guarding the inbounder. He takes a bit of a risk, but he gets away with it, stops it. You guys win the game. So that's fabulous. Talk to me about all of that as it transpires. The not guarding the inbounder, do you do it often? And, the level of aggression.
Yeah. So that was where we made the split-second decision where I ignored everyone. I was just like, we're going to switch. So it was 2 seconds left, match up, switch everything.
Right.
And that's where, instead of Callan being, in the middle of that 2-1-2 like he was for the majority of the game, he's now come up on the ball because, again, although, their shooters 5 and 9 hadn't hit, well, 5 didn't hit a shot all game. And, 9, he took a high volume, but didn't really get into a rhythm. I knew that if it's a 2-point game, like they're going to try and win. Like they're going to try and win in this situation.
You knew that about the other coach. He was,
because he's like, that's just the personality that he is, he's trying to win it there. And that's, so I'm like, let's just switch everything. Best case scenario, we force a pass over the top, which will take time off the clock, and you're forcing a contested shot.
Right.
Now, Callan getting his block from behind has given me easily the best photo. If you look where that camera guy is, like easily the best photograph I've had. And it's definitely a moment worth, which we've captured. And it's fantastic to have that block as a still image for a keepsake. In hindsight, like that could have been he could have got called there. Like it's clean, the block's clean, but that could have so easily gone the other way. And
for sure,
but it is what it is. So in terms of like roaming, like I know there was a situation in the first half where Callan threw it into the post. They doubled Amari. Callan cut right to the rim, got it back, and he missed the layup. But for me, it's a case of, again, we're always going to have somebody on the inbounder, typically when we're playing man-to-man, but I don't necessarily have a problem with them turning around and taking actions, because typically on sideline sets, like you always kind of see the same things, right? Like it's either going to be, if you've got a big and a guard, you're probably going to run a zipper action into something, or It might be zipper action, weak side big then comes and sets a ball screen or whatever. It might be, you get it in and you go like stagger away. Like you're always going to see similar sorts of things. So actually, it's just a case of there's 2 seconds left. If the guard does come off the stagger and he switches on to take that away, yeah, it's not something we always do, but in that moment, it's not it's probably not giving Calling enough credit. Like he probably made that read to turn around and see it versus me telling him.
You mentioned the block being a great photo. I actually think when he realizes he got it clean, that right there is arms up and giving a little flex. So how many days did it take for your blood pressure to come down after this one?
I don't think it has. That's why I've got no hair. No, like I think it was just it took a lot to take that all in, because we lost to Haringey by 2 in the semi-final at the start of December. We then went to a holiday tournament, and we lost in the final by 2 to Charnwood. And then obviously, so those 2 things happened. And obviously previously in May, we'd obviously lost in the final as well. So like there was like a 6-month period where I'd lost a semi-final and 2 finals by 2. And you start to ask yourself all those questions like, what am I doing? Is it me? Like you just end up going down a rabbit hole.
For sure.
Where when we got that block and that game happened, like it was probably a good week until I realized that, oh, this is like, we've actually done this. And it was even today, like I watched it back, obviously in preparation for this. And that's the first time I've watched the game back full in about a year. Right. And the emotion came right back. Like when I saw Mate travel at the end, like I'm still sat here swearing at my computer, like, like even now.
You have to dribble. You know that. You have to dribble. What happened?
Exactly. But now, like it was, and obviously like the moment at the end when like all our fans rush the floor and you see the guys embrace, and for some of them it's the first national title they've won, like all that emotion came back, and it was awesome, but it was certainly a pressure environment. And I think it was one of the games which, lives up to that. You don't necessarily know what it's like until you're in that situation. And that was a pressure cooker, which it was great to be in it. I learned a lot, but it was, that's what we live for, right? Like it was
well, I mean, everything is reps, right? At the end of the day, we talk to our players about allowing themselves to be able to fail and all that, and then we're significantly harder on ourselves as coaches. And like, you mentioned, like, I wish I could say that I had the right answer right here, but I didn't. Now you have the experience of like, well, this worked last time, let's try that again. Everything is reps when it comes down to. That's why actually Ryan Pannone said this to me at the NBA Summer League. He's like, I'd coach anywhere. Everything is just a matter of like getting as many reps as possible. And that to me really stuck with me when he said that, because like, to achieve the level that he's at and still be like, no, man, I'll go coach my 6-year-old if I have to at the end of the day. I don't care. Let's get as many reps as possible to get better. To have that mentality still is fantastic to me. And that's really what it comes down to. That's sort of the basis of what I've tried to create with this show. Unless anybody has some questions, I'm going to start to wind it down there. Troy, thank you so much for your time. This was fantastic. I've really appreciated being able to sit down, pick your brain, go through some film with you and really hear what you're doing over there. I thought this was incredible. And just thank you so much. And I hope, as I say every week, that this show continues to have value for anybody who tunes in, watches, etc. So thank you for your time. I'll stop the recording there, hang out for a minute or two, let's chat afterwards for sure, but just thank you. I'm nothing but sincere gratitude for you taking the time. Appreciate it.
Awesome stuff.